Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and today we're going to have a look at the GFS, the GEM, the ECMWF, the GFS ensembles, as well as looking at some precipitation charts, because we do have quite a lot of snow around actually at the moment. I've been saying over the last week that most of the snow that we're going to be seeing over the next week is going to be a lot of nowcast, so we won't really know what's going to be happening or where it's going to happen until just a few hours or 12 hours before it happens, and even then it's still very uncertain. So currently we do have quite cold conditions running along the east coast. We've got cold air to our east, if you have a look at the upper airs, cold air to our east, mild air coming off the Atlantic. Running into this cold air, it's going to turn to snow over some higher ground in the east. Now, it doesn't show it too well here on current GFS run, but it is currently snowing over higher ground further north. Nothing really south of maybe northern England, but overnight tomorrow there's potential it could turn to snow come tomorrow afternoon as cold air digs back in, and if we run through that you see low pressure drops southwards and we start to pull in a bit of an easterly flow. Cold air comes back in, you can see the blues start to reach the eastern part of the UK come Thursday afternoon, and we could be seeing some back edge snow with that. Now again, the amounts we see with that is still very variable, and it's not particularly. We might see a lot of falling snow, but I very much doubt you'll see a lot of accumulating snow, just simply because the ground is going to be quite mild and it's going to be quite wet as well. So it's going to be very difficult for it to stick. So it's going to be quite a messy event, depending on whether it actually comes off. The green and blocking we're seeing next week has, unfortunately, I seem to always be saying this, kind of downgraded. It almost looked nailed on yesterday and the day before, but again, with anything, the ensembles love to flip. I think we had a point yesterday morning where I think 25 out of the 30 ensembles were going below the -5 degree isotherm come mid next week. Now it's only about 10 to 15, so it's a major downgrade. But as we'll run through the GFS operational run, you can see sort of where it's gone wrong. Oh, there's a bit of a blip there with the run, but if we run through, you can see heights are beginning to arrive to our northwest. However, it's this low down here which is starting to develop on the models. So if this low hadn't developed, it wouldn't be pulling up these southwesterly winds. That would be much more of a slack flow, and we'd be driving in colder air from the north. However, as we run through this, that low pressure moves into the UK, and we're putting up southwesterly winds. Even though we still got that block up there, it's not as strong, and the cold edge remaining really far too far to our north. And as we run through this node, doesn't really move through, as the jet stream is a bit stronger than it was modelled in the last couple of days. High pressure nowhere near as strong, and the cold air, if we look at the upper airs, remains far to our north. We do put a bit of cold air in, so potentially some marginal stuff. But again, it's very disappointing with this sort of blocking pattern with the southern stratospheric warming. You really would expect to see some colder conditions and some snow around. It really is quite disappointing that whenever we've had the good synoptics, the cold air's never really been around, and as soon as we have cold air to our north and our east, the synoptics never come off. It's very disappointing. It can still flip, of course, but considering it's getting closer and closer, I'm very sceptical now of it. As we move through, you do start to see towards day 10 it could turn a bit colder. Maybe a channel low there again, but again the cold extent is very far diminished. Models are forecasting this a couple hundred miles further southwards, so the -5 moving into France, -10 getting into Scotland, but it's just really not happening. And as we move through, that block is almost useless really. It's more pushing this jet stream, because it's far further west, it's pushing the jet stream southwards in the western Atlantic, which in turn drives the jet stream further northwards as it reaches the UK, driving in southwesterly winds. We love to see it, and you can see big mild chunks of air heading straight towards the UK. Even though it does go temporarily cold here or there, it still is trending milder, unfortunately, as by the end we have extensive blocking quite far to our north, very cold in Eastern Europe, as you see, bitterly cold, but we are sitting in the mild sector. It's you'll have to see it, don't you? And as we end the run, we stay quite unsettled and fairly mild. This GFS run currently is not looking particularly good, and we could all change as ever with these events. It could just flip in the next day and return to much colder conditions again. But I really wouldn't bank on it simply because of the sort of patterns we're seeing. Hopefully it does flip, but you never know. The GM and the ECMW are a bit more optimistic with the blocking potential, but again they have diminished as well. And as we run through, you can see very similar patterns to the GFS, and we'll run through those precipitation potentials for the next couple of days at the end of the video. But as we run through, you see the blocking heading towards Greenland. It's a bit stronger on this GM run, and we do actually pull down some much colder air on the GM run. Quite a good northerly wind, but the cold extent isn't as much, and the blocking doesn't get as far north, so we don't pull down the bitterly cold air before it starts to topple, and by day 10 we go southwesterly. So the GM does go colder, and if we run back, it does go colder for a good couple of days there, but generally it's not going bitterly cold, and there's no real lift with that, so I suspect it would just be a sort of a toppler northerly instead of the blocking Greenland high that we hopefully wanted to see. If you look at the northern hemisphere view, you can see there's a lot of blocking around, just not really coming into place where we need it. If we now run onto the ECMWF, you can see the ECMWF builds high pressure out towards Greenland. It does build a decent block, but again, that low to our south is way too strong, and it's actually driving in southwesterly winds to the southern part of the UK, unfortunately. And as we end the run, we've still got a lot of Atlantic blocking towards Greenland, and we are starting to pull in colder air from the north. However, it's coming through the North Atlantic, and it's just getting very, very moderated and modified, and it's getting milder, and by the time it's hardly -5, reaching parts of the UK as it pulls out to the Atlantic, we are pulling in much colder air. But again, it's nothing widespread, it's not a sustained pattern that we were seeing a couple of days, or at least yesterday or the day before, and it's looking like the Atlantic's ready to break through, unfortunately, and that very bitterly cold air is not making it down into Europe either. So a lot of people saying it's going to go bitterly cold in Europe. It looking like it's going bitterly cold in Europe for the next couple of days. Beyond that though, if we're looking at these ECMWF GFS runs, it's looking like that cold is migrating back towards Russia, and it's going to go mild again for Europe, because the -5 is, it's not particularly widespread throughout Europe, unfortunately. If we run onto the GFS upper airs and precipitation, this is for London, you can see got a lot of sort of zonal sine wave, but it's reasonably cold with the jet stream a bit further south. And that's why we could see potential snow events with that -5 air moving in. Beyond that, it's going to go a bit milder because that's that southwesterly wind coming in with that initial low pressure as the blocking tries to sustain. And then a lot of on the ensemble still do go colder. Not cold anymore, but colder, with the northerly flow bringing colder air back in before it trends milder again, with low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. Very unsettled as well, but again, there are still hints that there could be cold potential still in the longer term, but these have greatly reduced. And even if we go back to the 12 o'clock yesterday, you can see there's a lot more going much colder in the longer term compared to the 6 o'clock run this morning, where a lot of them have lifted up, and it's going to be going a lot milder on this ensembles. Again, there's still a lot of scatter. Any of these ensemble runs are a possibility, so we can't rule out any of them, but at the moment it's not looking particularly optimistic. We just have to really wait and see over the next couple of days, as they hopefully will actually resolve a solution. Because the most disappointing thing about this is that 1 minute they show cold, 1 minute they show cold for a good couple of days, and we all think, oh, there's a potential we could see quite a sustained cold pattern here, and then the next day they just flip back to mild. It's very disappointing. But it just is what it is. I just seem like we never get the it's mild and then it flips to cold. It's always cold and it flips to mild. But it is what it is. If we run through the GFS precipitation charts, you can see cold further north and east. And then as we pull back on Thursday afternoon, you see a bit of snow potential for southern and eastern areas in the Midlands as well. So maybe with that, I wouldn't expect too much accumulation for that. But again, it's just a really nowcast situation. If we run to Saturday, there's a chance of some snow on the leading edge of that. But again, this GFS one has it further eastwards, more into France, Belgium, and Netherlands. As we run through, we're just generally looking at any trends. You see low pressure building up from the south. There could be quite a lot of snow around, maybe in the Highlands. But again, it's too far out to really say anything, and generally looking fairly mild and rainy, unfortunately. And there is a chance maybe a channel low coming through, potentially producing some more sustained snowfall. But again, it's pretty uncertain at the moment. We'll have a look at the GM precipitation charts. So currently, potential for snow for northern and eastern areas, pulling away to the south, potentially putting snowfall further southwards. Beyond that, maybe some more snow into Saturday, so providing more snow for southern and eastern areas, and maybe the Midlands, northern England as well. And as we continue run through the GM, so there's rain, sleet, snow showers around, but generally nothing too exceptional. Lastly, we'll have a look at the icon model. And the icon model so very similar. Downplays a little bit the snow potential there, but again over northern and northeastern parts potentially for snow, and then further south and southwards into the Midlands, eastern England, potentially snow on the back edge of the band on Thursday. Beyond into Saturday, again potential for snow on the leading edge, especially over hills. Does look like it's starting to widespread snow into Europe. So we have to watch the exact pattern for that. As you can see, parts of eastern areas and northern areas seeing substantial snowfall before turning back to rain as milder air sets in. And beyond that, just looking Atlantic driven. So generally, it's not looking too good, but it's just what we got to live in. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe me, and I'll see you again for another video soon.